Okay, we're in section 3.5 where we're going to write and graph equations of lines. So before we get into writing the equations, let's take a look at the various equations that we have for lines. The first one should be pretty noticeable for many of you. The y equals mx plus b. Y equals mx plus b, that is considered called slope-intercept form. And because they give you the slope, they give you the intercept, that's the form we use. And that's probably the most known equations for the line. But there are some more. The second one there, the y minus y sub 1 equals m times by the quantity of x minus x sub 1, that is called point slope form, which means you're going to use that particular equation when you are just given a point that's on the line and you're given the slope of the line. Finally, the ax plus by equals c, that is called standard form. Now, if you have an equation that gives you standard form, usually you can graph it using both finding x and y intercepts, and there are ways to solve it when it's in standard form. So first off, it's asking you to write an equation of a line with the given point m and the y-intercept b. So normally when they ask you to write an equation, it's usually in the form of y equals mx plus b. Unless they specifically ask for another form, that's usually the most accepted equation of a line, so that's what they're kind of looking for. So since they give you m is 3 and b is 2, that means the slope is 3 and the y-intercept is 2, so the equation for this is y equals 3x plus 2. Okay, pretty simple. B and C are the same thing, so we go over here, it's going to be y equals, instead of writing m, I'm going to put the negative 1/2 x, and it's going to be plus 8. And then for C, I got y equals 5/2 x minus 14. You could have plus negative 14 if you wanted to. But those are how you write lines when you're given the slope and you're also given the y-intercept. Okay, not too bad. There's going to be some instances where they're going to ask you to write an equation of a line that passes through the given point and it has a given slope. So for A, B, and C, it says I have different points and different slopes. We can still write an equation of a line. We can still put it in this form, but you're going to have to use some of the other forms to help you out. So since they give you a point and they give you the slope, you have to initially use point slope form to help you out. That whole y minus y sub 1 equals m times by the quantity of x minus x sub 1. All right. Now, the 0.54, that's going to be your x1 and y1. And then m is your slope, so m is 4. So you just plug it into this formula. So it looks like this. So it's going to be y minus 4 equals 4 times by the quantity of x minus 5. So that's what it looks like in point slope form. To get it into slope intercept form, here's what we have to do. Your first thing you're going to do is look on the right hand side of your equal sign. You're going to distribute the 4 over the x minus 5. So I got this y minus 4 equals, and then I distribute this 4x minus 20. So I just distributed the 4. Then from here, you just have to get y by itself. So you add 4 to both sides. So I got this y equals 4x minus 16. So that's how we are able to write the equation. I look at B, same thing, x1, y1. So slope is negative 1/12. I go over here, it's going to be y minus a negative 3 equals 0 times by the quantity of x. Oh, I'm sorry. That's my bad. Let me erase that. M is not 0. M is negative 112 times by the quantity of x minus 0. Sorry about that. So again, you're just going to distribute that negative 112 over the x minus 0. So this is cross the line change sign, so I'm just going to change this to y plus 3 equals negative 112x, and when you multiply it by 0, you just get 0, so I'm just going to leave it as is. So the final step is subtracting everything by 3. I get y equals negative 112x minus 3. And then I look over at C, same thing. You got y minus y sub 1, which is negative 2, equals m, which is negative 2/3, times by the quantity of x, looks like minus a negative 8, which both of these are cross the line change of sign situations, so it's y plus 2 and x plus 8. And distribute that negative 2/3, so I got y plus 2 equals negative 2/3 x, and looks like it'll be minus, and then I'm going to go, what, 16/3 will be my distributed value. So then I go over here, I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides, but instead of subtracting 2, I'm going to try to have a common denominator. So it's going to be, what, 6/3, because 6 divided by 3 is 2. This gets crossed out, so now I got y equals negative 2/3 x, and negative 16 minus 6 gives us a negative 22, so this is going to be a minus 22/3. If you wanted to put the decimal approximation on that, that'd be okay, but that is how we find it, find that as an equation. The last one, it's asking us to write an equation of a line with an undefined slope that passes through the point negative 9, 6. Now, we talked about undefined slope, which means that undefined slope means it was a vertical line. And anytime we dealt with a vertical line, it was going to be x equals some value. Well, the value you have to find is whatever point is on the line. So if x is negative 9, that means the equation you're looking for is x equals a negative 9. All right, and coincided, say if you're trying to find an equation that had a 0 slope that was passing through negative 9, 6, you just have to say it was going to be y equals something, and then that y value would be the value that you'd use. Okay. All right, from here, we've done this quite a few times in intermediate algebra, practical algebra. It still means the same thing. You're going to write an equation of a line that passes through a point and is parallel to the line with the given equation. So you're given a point, you're given an equation. It's specifically asking us that it's going to be parallel. So we have to find that slope. All right. The characteristic of parallel lines means that they have the same slope. So the slope of this line is going to be negative 2 because the slope of this line is negative 2. Now we're just going to do the exact same thing as we did in the previous page. We have our point, 0, 8. We have our slope, negative 2. We plug it into the point slope formula. So this is going to be y minus y sub 1, which is 8, equals m, which is negative 2, times by the quantity of x minus 0. We distribute, so we got y minus 8 equals negative 2x, and it's going to be 0, so I'm just going to leave it as is. So simply we add 8 to both sides, so now I got y equals negative 2x plus 8. They're the same slope, and this line would belong into 0, 8. If you wanted to prove that and make sure it was true, you just plug in your x's and your y's, and x, 0 in for x, 8 in for y, make sure it's a true statement. It is, in fact, a true statement. Okay? So now I look over here. Now, they give it in point slope form for the equation, but we can still find the slope because the slope is right here. So that means that the slope in this case is going to be 1/5. No big deal. Plug it into our point slope formula using 3, 8 as our point. So now it's going to be y minus 8 equals 1/5 times by the quantity of x minus 3. We distribute the 1/5, so I got y minus 8 equals 1/5 x minus 3/5. I add 8 to both sides, but I'm going to make it so it's common, so it's going to be, what, 40 over 5. 40 over 5 is 8. And I go over here, it's y equals 1/5 x, and it's going to be plus 37 over 5. If you want to leave it as a improper fraction, that's okay. And we'll go from there. Looking at C, I have negative 2 comma 1, and then I have 10x plus 4y equals negative 8. Now, it doesn't tell us the slope in this particular equation, so we're going to have to convert that into slope-intercept. So basically what we're going to do is solve for y. So I'm going to subtract 10x from both sides. So now I got 4y equals negative 10x minus 8. Divide everything by 4. So now I got y equals, looks like a negative 5 halves x minus 2. And I found my slope. My slope is a negative 5 halves, so I get to solve it accordingly. So now I go over here, knowing my points are negative 2 comma 1, so it's going to be y minus 1 equals a negative 5 halves times by the quantity of x minus a negative 2. So this is a cross the line change of sign situation. I go over here, it's going to be y minus 1 equals negative 5 halves x minus 5, and then I add 1 to both sides here, so it's going to be y equals a negative 5 halves x minus 4. Okay? Now, pretty much doing the same thing with these examples, but we're going to write an equation of a line that passes through a given point and it's perpendicular to the given equation. So we talked about it in 3.4 when we deal with perpendicular lines. All we get to do is do the opposite reciprocal. So the slope of my new line is flip the fraction, so it's going to be 3 over 7. Change the sign. It was positive, now it's going to be negative. And then now I have my point, I have my slope. I get to plug it into the equation. So it's going to be y minus 1 equals a negative 3 over 7 times by the quantity of x minus a negative 1. Cross the line, change the sign. Distribute that negative 3/7, so it's going to be y minus 1 equals a negative 3/7 x minus 3 over 7. Final step, add 1 to both sides, so I'm going to add it 7 over 7 to both sides. So now I got y equals a negative 3 over 7x, and it looks like it's going to be plus 4 over 7. Okay? So these two lines would be perpendicular. For B, it's given to us in point slope form, but we can still identify the slope. The slope is right here. That's negative 2. So if I have to flip the fraction, it's going to be 1/2. It's negative in the original equation, so it's going to be positive in the equation that we're going to use. So again, point slope formula, y minus 3 equals 1/2 times by the quantity of x minus 2. Distribute that 1/2. So now I got y minus 3 equals 1/2 x minus 1. Add 3 to both sides. I get y equals 1/2 x plus 2. And last example on this page is to give us a point of negative 8 comma 0. We have an equation of 3x minus 5y equals 6. Like I said on the one on the top, we have to put it into slope-intercept form in order to find our value of m. So essentially we're solving for y. So now I got negative 5y equals negative 3x plus 6. Divide everything by a negative 5. I get y equals a positive 3/5 x minus 6 over 5. So since my slope is positive 3/5, my slope here is going to be flip the fraction, so it's 5 over 3. It's positive, so it's going to be negative, so it's a negative 5/3. So I go over here, y minus, looks like y sub 1 is 0, equals, slope is negative 5 over 3, times it by the quantity of x minus a negative 8. Cross the line, change the sign over here. Anything minus 0 is just going to be itself, so I've got y equals, looks like negative 5/3 x. Looks like it's going to be a minus, and it's going to be minus 40 over 3. Here we go. Final thing is able to graph these equations, whether they're in slope-intercept form, whether they're in standard form, and whether they're in point-slope form. Okay, we have a pretty good idea of what we have to do with slope-intercept. You find the y-intercept, you find the slope, no big deal. Most people have a little bit more of a struggle when it comes to standard form and point-slope form. So the first one, it's in standard form, so you can put it into slope-intercept form if you'd like, but if you don't, here's what you do. So all we have to do is find the x and the y intercepts, okay? So to find the x-intercept, all you have to do is set y equal to 0. To find the y-intercept, you just set x equal to 0, and then you're going to solve the two equations. So looking for the x-intercept, I got negative x plus 3. Instead of writing y, I'm going to put 0 equals a negative 9. Anything times it by 0 is 0, so I got negative x equals a negative 9. Divide everything by negative 1. X equals a positive 9. Okay, so when I say x equals a positive 9, I go over to my x-axis, and then I'm going to plot the point 9 comma 0. The reason why is because I already set y to 0, so 9 comma 0 is my point that I'm plotting. So I go over here, find the y-intercept. I set x to 0, so it's going to be 0 plus 3y equals a negative 9. I divide everything by 3, so I got y equals a negative 3. So we already said x was 0, so this is going to be 0 comma negative 3. So I'm going to plot that point. And it looks like it is right there. I found the 2 points. 2 points make a line. I connect them. Okay? I look over here. It says 2y minus 4 equals negative x plus 1. This particular example is not any of the 3 equations that we looked at the beginning of the section, so we have to make them into one of them. So I'm going to choose slope-intercept. Like all of us, it's the easiest one, so it allows us to solve for y. So I'm going to add 4 to both sides. So I got 2y equals negative x plus 5. Divide everything by 2. So now I got y equals a negative 1/2 x plus 5 over 2. So 5 over 2 is 2.5, so that means my y-intercept is 2.5, so I'm going to plot that point. And then negative 1/2, so it means I'm going to go down 1 to the right 2, 1, 2. If you want to go up 1 to the left 2, that is also fine. And we have enough information there to make our line, which is as so. And that is being able to write and graph equations of lines. Hope this helps. Until next time.